Well, hello there, and welcome back to Beyond the Compass, where travelers and the paranormal meet at the crossroads. I am your host, Eric Garcia, and today I'm very happy to introduce our guest. We have the pleasure of hosting a true maestro of the macabre, Blair Bathory. An Atlanta-based filmmaker, she has been a pivotal force in the horror genre for over 15 years. Blair is the creative mind behind FEAR HAUS, a production company she founded to showcase diverse voices in horror, particularly from international creators and women. Her efforts have provided a platform for underrepresented creators, enriching the diversity of stories told in horror cinema. Blair's fascination with filmmaking ignited at the age of 6 when she began crafting stop-motion movies using her father's DV camera. This early interest evolved into a multifaceted career encompassing roles as screenwriter, director, producer, and digital content creator. Her collaborations with industry giants such as Fangoria, BuzzFeed, Paramount Pictures, and Universal Pictures underscore her dynamic presence in the field. In addition to her filmmaking endeavors, Blair co-hosts the Something Scary podcast, where she delves into ghost stories, urban legends, and paranormal accounts. She distinguishes herself as a documentarian rather than a paranormal investigator, focusing on capturing and sharing compelling stories. Currently, she's developing several projects and anticipates releasing 4 films this year, either as a writer or director. In this episode, we'll explore Blair's journey through horror filmmaking, her insights into Atlanta's emergence as a film industry hub, and her commitment to creating a more inclusive and diverse horror community. Blair, welcome to the show.
What a beautiful intro.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
I try. Okay, let's see. Well, it's my job as a host to get my audience, let my audience know why I wanted you here. And when I was looking at all this, I'm like, wow, because I'm kind of a newbie to the horror scene. If you ask my sister, I'm a total newbie, but I have a few favorites. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Now, you started this at a very young age. Your journey began at 6. Now, can you share how those early experiments with your dad's camera influenced your passion for horror and storytelling? I mean, which came first, the storytelling or the horror?
Definitely storytelling came first. My dad was in news media, and he was a news director, so it's definitely in my blood. But he won a DV camera at a golf tournament, and he ended up giving it to me. A very odd gift for a 6-year-old little girl, but I was so enamored with that camera, and I'm an only child, so I was alone a lot. So I was already having a lot of daydreams and coming up with scenarios and characters to have someone to talk to, because I was just in my room alone after school. And getting that camera, I was able to create a world that I was in control of. And I think that was really the beginning of wanting to become a director. And then when Blair Witch Project came out, I had an epiphany about 3 years ago when I visited Burkittsville, the filming locations of the Blair Witch Project. And that was, I didn't realize when I was young that I was witnessing a woman directing for the first time on screen in the Blair Witch. And I think that influenced my decision to get into that.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so the filmmaking was, in a sense, you're creating your own worlds. You're creating, the ideal situation. And so I do remember you saying in previous interviews the influence that the Blair Witch had on you, and it became kind of your nickname, I believe, at one point.
Oh yeah, not at one point. It still is. People, if I go to Starbucks and I say my name immediately, like the Blair Witch, so it follows me everywhere I go. But at this point, it feels like a birthright that, Blair Witch didn't exist when I was born, but only a few years later it did. And I've been associated with that and intertwined with that film my whole life. And I had the opportunity to tell the director that in person, Ed Sanchez, and it was a very cool moment for me.
I saw that. Yeah. You looked like you were in seventh heaven. It's like, ah.
Yeah, he's the nicest guy, and I think since I would call him a friend at this point. So it's some people I think are meant to do things, and I think I was meant to make horror movies. So
Yeah, and he literally, for the most part, for the population, he was the one that kicked off the whole found footage subgenre of horror. I still remember when that movie came out. I remember going to it at the theater. It was a trippy. There were still some elements. I think it was the children laughing in the darkness that
Yeah.
creeped me out. I'm like, oh hell no, I'm going the opposite direction. Okay,
It's such a special film for so many reasons. And, a lot of people that are in the horror community would say Cannibal Holocaust started the found footage genre, but nobody did it like Blair Witch. And they modernized so many elements that we still use today in the industry, including marketing. So I think it's a prolific film, not just in the genre, but as a medium in the film industry.
Absolutely. And they've made like what, two sequels to it? I think they tried. Didn't they try to make
They've
a
made,
series or
yeah,
something?
they did like a reimagining with Adam Wingard, and then they did Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows,
Yeah,
which
I
I
think I
like.
yeah, I think I tried watching. I didn't finish it, but the
Yeah.
original was just so unique for its time.
Hmm.
Have you met any of the actors that were in the film?
I've met the loveliest people in the world. I don't know what it is about Maryland. There's something in the water that makes those people very happy and pleasant to be around. But I've met the fisherman at the beginning of the film, Ed Swanson, and I've met, excuse me, the mother and daughter duo at the beginning of the film as well, and they're just the most lovely people. I've hung out with them 3 years in a row now. It's become a tradition to go to Burkittsville every year.
Right on. I like that. So now, do you believe your Southern roots influence the atmospheric tension and the cultural nuances in your narratives when you create a film?
Yeah, absolutely. I think anybody who's a storyteller, their background influences the stories they're telling, even subconsciously. I just did a short film, proof of concept project that's hopefully going to be premiering somewhere very soon this year. Waiting to hear back from festivals, so everybody cross your fingers. But that was heavily influenced by the Southern Gothic aesthetic, and I actually ended up partnering with this fella named Briscoe Park, who is a photographer, and his whole shtick is Southern Gothic photographs.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's an aesthetic that I'm really drawn to, and that's probably because it's where I was raised.
Yeah, it's such a part of you, and you
Hmm.
can't help but just put it on the screen as well.
Hmm.
Right. So I mean, in your career, you've worn many hats. I mean, from the
Yes.
production side, the direction side, now hosting an incredibly popular podcast. How do these different roles complement each other? And, what have you learned wearing so many multiple hats?
I've learned mostly appreciation for all of the disciplines it takes to make a movie. And I'm really blessed that I've been able to work in most departments. The only two that I haven't is makeup, hair and makeup, not special effects. I have worked in special effects, and costume. Very intimidated by costumes, and I will have nothing to do with it. I'll leave that to the professionals. But every other department I've had a hand in at some point in my career. Started in camera department as a assistant camera, cam op, and I've worked in post production for a very long time. So I just have appreciation of everybody's skills mostly. But at the end of the day, all of these things are similar because they're just telling stories. Doing the podcast was something that completely fell into my lap. Something scary came to me. I auditioned just kind of on a whim and was put at the front of the thing. And I've been doing it almost 3 years, over 150 episodes at this point. So that's become a big part of my life. But ultimately, the thing that I take with me everywhere is I'm just trying to connect with other people through telling scary stories.
I like that. And with the podcast, you're like the second or third host it's ever had, something along those lines. Yeah,
I
that's
am technically, so Stephanie Strange and I were hired at the same time. We uh, have been co-hosts essentially, so we're both technically the third host, but it started with Sapphire Sandalo. She created the series under the Snarl brand. And then it was Markia that took over after her. And now me and Stephanie.
Okay, yes, I'm familiar with Sapphire Sandalo. I've seen a couple of her, some of her work. Wow, I did not know that. That's great. So now let's move on to Fear House, where that came from, because it's been a significant part of your career now. What inspired you to create this platform, to focus on all the diverse voices in horror? I mean, was it people you knew, that had something, but they weren't getting represented? Where did the inspiration for Fear House come from?
Well, I moved to Atlanta in 2015, and I was had just turned 24 years old. And at that point, I had been working in the industry over 6 years, and I had been involved in film festivals. I had done 2 of my own short films, and I recognized kind of early on these people were making very high production value shorts, but then ultimately they had nowhere to put them because you can't really sell a short film. And at the time, Alter didn't exist, Crypt TV didn't exist. So I thought it would be really cool to kind of mix the anthology element of like something to the effect of Elvira or Tales from the Dark Side or Tales from the Crypt, and all these short films and filmmakers that I had seen along the way. And ultimately, I started it not planning on being the host myself, but my best friend who I went to high school with, who's also in film and television production, I called him because I was like, I don't have any money to pay an actress. And he's like, well, you do it. You're the one picking the movies. And ultimately, that's what came to pass. And I took on this Vampira Elvira role. And it was, I don't want to be an actress, oddly enough. So it was out of necessity that I did that. But
But you
it
have
was a
that.
very,
You
mhm.
definitely have the look for it, though. Okay,
Yeah, I know.
I can see that 100%.
It's God put a very interesting brain and a very interesting body. I'll put it that way. But basically, yeah, I did. I partnered with Moonshine Post Production and Drew Sawyer, and that's one of the biggest post houses in Atlanta. And we were partners on it for a while, and we shot over 100 episodes. And I got to work with a lot of incredible independent filmmakers and directors, and it was just a really fun time. It was purely about creation and uplifting filmmakers. So
Now, a lot of them are international short horror films. How do you curate these selections? And I mean, what qualities do you look for in these type of features?
I mean, the first is it well made? Is it good sound? Is it shot well? Is it directed well? Good acting? There's a lot of short films in the world, and some of them just are really well put together. So that was the first thing I'd look for. And then, is it a unique story? Is it something that's representative of where it's coming from and who it's made by? But there's so many. I think we had over 50 countries represented on Fear House by the end of it. And, we had films from Africa all the way to Ireland, all over the UK, the US. And it was something I was really proud of because I just have a knack for curation. I used to run the Spooky Empire Film Festival as well. I've curated horror blocks for film festivals all over the world. And I don't know, I think I have pretty good taste when it comes to those kind of things, and I don't have any fear of reaching out to people and being like, "Hey, you want to screen your movie?" So that's
Now,
basically it.
now I know who to call when I put together mine.
Yeah.
I do actually have a couple of ideas, but I'm like way, way, way from putting it on film. In a recent interview with them, you discussed your approach to storytelling. Now, how has your narrative style evolved over the years, and what would you say which influences have shaped it?
I'm still trying to figure out my shtick. I haven't had the opportunity to direct as many films as I would have liked. I'm only 34, but to me, I feel like I should have made at least 10 films by now. But that's not the way things work in the industry. It's a long game. You have to practice a lot of patience making movies. But I would say early on, I was very much, you know, into really big ideas. And, one of my films has a full foam latex creature suit with a 9-foot scorpion tail that was puppeteered in camera. And I was really about that. And I think the story took a back seat to these massive undertakings in regards to like the special effects or the camera work or even the actors. Now it's more about the story. And also, I really like figuring out the marketing aspect of things, how that's going to come into play. And I've just written a lot more scripts. I've been hired to write multiple scripts in the last 3 years, and I've churned out at least 5 feature film screenplays in the last 3 years. So I think I'm just overall more skilled, and I'm just a better writer. And all of films start with a script. So if you don't have a good script, I don't think you have much.
You're looking for the compelling aspect,
Mm-hmm.
why we care about these characters.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And influences, I honestly, maybe this is a really not nice thing to say.
Go for it.
But
Go for
I
it.
really don't have any other than real life. The things that influence me are real ghost stories, true crime cases that I hear about. I mean, those are the things that are compelling to me, figuring out how to retell these really crazy, you can't believe true stories. But as far as like other filmmakers that I look to, I have a lot of people I respect and a lot of people I look up to, but nobody that I would point to and be like, that's who I want to make movies like. I want to make movies like Blair Bathory, and that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I like that. Yeah, and I also, you said at one point in one of your interviews that they're similar to me, which is kind of like what I base my whole channel on and the podcast, is you have like almost fascination for urban legends.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like I've done quite a few videos on my channel about different urban legends, but for me, it's like I want to know where the story came from, what was the basis of it, and how it grew from there. Like I did a road trip video, The Devil's Highway, drove through Colorado and Utah and New Mexico just to find out the basis of it. And when you find the real story, I mean, I'm like, is there a paranormal element to it, or was it just blown up? For me, that's always been the joy of the fascination with urban legends, and you get the opportunity to add to it, to bring it to the screen, which I think is just amazing.
Yeah,
So,
I love urban legends. And what's interesting about those is they started somewhere and they were compelling enough to pass down
what would
over
you say is your
multiple generations and time.
Yeah, because for me, because I am Mexican, and we didn't really grow up with it because I'm not your average Mexican. I'll put it that way. Uh, uh, we grew up in Oklahoma. My family,
Okay.
my mom's from Oklahoma, so we were like the one of 2 Mexican families in the small town in Oklahoma that we're from, which was kind of interesting growing up. But my dad has even brought certain urban legends that he remembers, like La Llorona, which has been around for like a couple hundred years in the Hispanic culture.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad's in his 80s, and he remembers his sister scaring him with La Llorona when he was a little boy. So when you have urban legends like that carry on so many years, you got to wonder how much to this is actually real, for it to last so long.
Yeah.
So what's your particular favorite?
Anything with witches. I like stories about witches. I mean, I'm working with my good friend Gigi Salguera, who is also Mexican. She's from Mexico City and she lives with her family in Canada now. And we talk about brujas and brujeria all the time. And I love stuff with witchcraft and magic and also fairies, mermaids, girly stuff, I guess. But I think anything that has at the base of it some type of fantastical element that's also scary, I think I'm drawn to.
Yeah, so in a sense, urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's always drawn me. That's the kind of fiction films I like, like The X-Files,
Mm.
which I understand you never watched.
I
I
have
just
never watched the X-Files. Put that on record. I was a So Weird girl. It was this kind of obscure series on Disney Channel back in the day, and it was like X-Files for young girls, and I was obsessed with that show. So I didn't need the X-Files because I had So Weird.
okay. So now the indie horror scene, from what I understand, it's a very tight knit community.
Mm-hmm.
How has collaborating with these other independent creators changed your perspective on filmmaking at all, or added to it?
The horror community is incestuous. We all know each other. Everybody has worked. There's no 7 degrees of separation. Everybody's worked with somebody 1 degree over. I think that there is like a healthy competition for one, but also there is excitement for other people's work that I don't think other communities necessarily have. I've never experienced it in any other form in my life, but I could call up about 10 different filmmakers right now and start telling them about some of the stuff I'm working on. And I would feel some genuine excitement out of them, I'm sure, and vice versa. So I think there's a cool mix of healthy competition and support that comes with the horror community.
Yeah, because I've been to a few of the horror film conventions, a couple of the big ones when I used to live in Los Angeles, and it was just kind of funny. Everybody's so happy, everybody's so
Yeah.
friendly, and they love these gory movies, and people walk around with like a fake axe in their head, but everyone's just like, "Oh, check this out!" It's an interesting community, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely I've had fun going to those. So, with the rise of streaming platforms, do you think the distribution landscape has changed for the indie horror filmmakers? And I mean, is it more opportunities, more challenges, or is it a 50-50 with this landscape?
I like to think of things in a positive way. So for me, I think it's the most exciting time to be an independent filmmaker. I mean, Sean Baker just won the multiple Academy Awards for a low budget indie film. I think that's a real testament to where we are as a society, as a community, and an industry. I think that we can't sustain these massive budget blockbusters anymore. There's just no need for it.
Hmm.
So I think we're.
And
Go
if you
ahead.
look at the recent slate, like just it's not your genre, but like the Marvel cinematic movies,
Hmm.
the big superhero movies. I mean, people say, "Oh, it's superhero fatigue," but their last few blockbusters really haven't delivered. And you're like, man,
Yeah.
they put hundreds of millions of dollars into these films, and it's just like the one out right now, the Captain America movie. I watched it and I'm like, this is just a boring story, and it's like, yeah, you've got all the effects, but the story, me personally, I just thought it was a
I think
terribly boring story.
at the end of the day, people want to see other humans doing human things. So I don't think we need these massive spectacle pieces anymore. I think, it gets to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, we've seen things in space and underwater and dinosaurs. And it's like, that doesn't have any weight anymore. So I think the pendulum swings in all art forms. So I think we're going back to a place where it's like what Skinamarink did. I think part of the reason that did so well is it's just the most stripped down version of a movie you can possibly imagine. But that really resonated with people because for the last 15 years, all they've been fed is these Marvel spectacle movies that are just so polished, so heavy with VFX and, lots of cooks in the kitchen. It's not
Yeah,
one
and
singular filmmaker's vision either. So I think as an indie filmmaker, I feel like very excited. It feels like what it probably did feel like in the early 90s when ILM and Jurassic Park had just started kind of creating what we now know as modern VFX. So I think with the emergence of AI and I think with all the tools that we have phones and all the different types of cameras, meta glasses. To me, that's really exciting because it's just new ways to push the medium of filmmaking.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of an indie film, one of the originals for me that I always come back to because there's just so many interesting stories that came out of it was the original Terminator movie. I mean, that was made on a shoestring budget, and Jim Cameron didn't even have the permits for like a few of the places he filmed at. And it was like, okay, film it, let's get out of here, before the cops show up. And that is the kind of filmmaking I find so fascinating, and the work that the indie filmmakers do. Now, and related to the topic of big budgets and not really needing a big budget as long as you have a good story. I mean, how do you maximize your resources to create these impactful stories?
My job as a director, in my opinion, is to keep the ship on course and keep everybody excited. There's so many variables and things that go wrong during the process of making a film, from the early stages of pre-production to post. Until you screen it for an audience, it's a very, very long, arduous process. And for me, I think it's keeping all the team members excited and moving in the same direction. And that's very hard to do. And everybody kind of is driven by different motives, and you kind of have to figure out which, each person's personality and what drives them, and kind of meet them at their level, which is a skill in itself and something that I'm always trying to get better at. My communication skills and my leadership skills are really important. It's crazy how many directors I've worked under that don't have good communication skills. So that's super important to me, to be able to communicate the vision to my department heads and stuff. But I think the fun of not having the biggest budget ever and all the resources is the act of creation. When you have to problem solve, there is a level of excitement there, if you choose to look at it that way. And I've always seen indie filmmaking as kind of like a cowboy pirate level of living life. It's almost like being a carny or something, being an independent filmmaker. You kind of have to find the joy in the chaos, and I think that I'm really good at that, for better or worse. So
yeah, I would think in a weird way also not having that massive budget frees you up in a sense.
Yeah.
Which I could definitely see that. And I mean, along those lines of the budget and the look and the aesthetic, I had this question, like platforms like YouTube have given rise to subgenres like analog horror. And for those of you in the audience that aren't familiar with it, analog horror is a subgenre of horror that uses the aesthetics of old media to create an unsettling atmosphere. It's often characterized by low fidelity graphics, distorted audio, and cryptic messages. How do you feel about this trend? And have you considered experimenting with these kind of formats?
Oh yeah. I love found footage and analog horror and screen life horror. Anything that blurs the line between reality and fiction, I am all about. And I think that's a really fun mechanism to tell a story, because it's fun to mess with people. So if you can make something that feels real, as close to being real as possible, that really gets me excited.
Yeah, because I'm old enough to remember all these films from the 80s and 90s and what they look like. And now you have these newer films come out. The name of it escapes me. It's a recent film where the talk show host interviews the devil.
Late Night with the Devil.
Late Night with the Devil. And when I saw the first part of it, I was like, wow, this feels like a trip back in time.
Yeah.
Like I did go out and rent an old VHS tape because I do still have VCRs because VCRs are awesome. But I digress. So what's interesting is you have also a kind of a fascination with dark tourism. And could you define that formula? Because I thought that's more, people going to places that had like horrible accidents or something happen. Is it, how
Yeah,
would you define dark tourism?
dark tourism to me is alternative travel. So any place that is off the beaten path that has some level of spooky, scary, or weird history attached to it, or morbid. So a lot of people
Mm.
consider dark tourism places like Auschwitz or um, death sites of certain people, famous graves. That's included, but I also, my personal definition is, paranormal sites, haunted places, places that have association with witches or fairies. I went to the island of Guernsey a couple years back, and that whole island has a dark tourist spot every couple of miles. And it charges my antenna for creative signals. Going to those places inspires me. I'll find store, like I've gotten to a point where I got my research methods down so tight at this point that I can go anywhere in the world, quite literally anywhere, and find a spooky site to visit. And it's just fun for me. It's a hobby, but it also feeds into my storytelling endeavors too.
So which would be your dream spot to film in? I mean, if you could film a documentary in any of these locations worldwide, where would it be, and what would be the stories you'd want to tell?
It would definitely be Elizabeth Bathory's tower that she passed away in. That's my magnum opus of dark tourist sites that I want to visit. But I love going to Japan, somewhere in Japan, anywhere international. Italy has a lot of cool places that I have on the list. I have a spreadsheet of about 3,000 locations I've researched over the last 5 years. So I'm just trying to knock one of those
Yeah.
off.
What is that famous island in Italy? Is it Proviglia Island? It's right off the coast where there was an asylum, and then they had like uh that disease that eats away at you. I
Yeah.
forgot the name of it. Escape it. And they put them all on this one island, and it's a horrible story. But I mean, it constantly pops up in the paranormal community of people going there, filming there, and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think I've heard of it. I there's a island of witches in Italy that I really want to visit. But yeah, there's just I don't think people realize how many fascinating historical stories are just hidden in plain sight in pretty much any place in the world.
Okay, so now with the psychological aspect of horror, sometimes it can be more unsettling than the actual gore. The build up, the tension. You know, what are psychological elements that you like to incorporate in your stories?
Anything where perception is involved, that freaks me out because how do you know what I'm perceiving versus what you're perceiving is the same thing? You'd never know.
Okay.
So anything with the mind or somebody losing their mind or experiencing a different reality than other people around them really scares me on a very visceral level. Um, I think anything where you are not in control of your own body or having bodily autonomy is really freaky as well. So body horror stuff freaks me out. The Fly has always been a movie I go back to. Um, Obviously, Cronenberg's the master of body horror, but that one in particular just really gets under my skin. I've seen it so many times, but it still just bothers the shit out of me. But yeah, I think things where your autonomy or your control is in the hands of someone else. So I'd love to shoot something in an asylum someday, or something. I have a script that involves dementia that I really want to make at some point in my life, but stuff like that really freaks me out.
They're here in Austin. They're just about an hour outside of Austin. There is an abandoned mental health asylum. That actually, I interviewed the guys that run they run a paranormal investigations out of there, and I interviewed them a couple of months back. But they had Ghost Adventures filmed there. They've had films set up there. That would be an ideal spot for you. I mean, I can give you their number after the interview if you'd like to reach
Yeah.
out to them. I don't,
Any
yeah,
asylum I'm really interested in,
yeah,
because there's
yeah.
just so much darkness that happened in those places. I think there's an imprint on most of them for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and this place definitely has it. I mean, it's right out of a horror movie. Everything about it, definitely, and the weird stuff that's happened to them since they've been running, their show through it is it's crazy. Now, on the business side of the indie horror scene, getting it financed and the promotion on that side of it. Crowdfunding has become a popular method for the indie filmmakers. Have you utilized this approach? If so, what was the experience like?
I've been involved in other people's films that did major crowdfunding campaigns, specifically Chris Stuckman's movie I worked on about 2.5 years ago. They raised over $3 million through crowdfunding. I did a
Wow.
crowdfunding campaign in 2010, something like that, for a short film. I will never do it again. It's so much pressure, and it is a very hard thing to do because of other people's expectations. When people feel like they own the piece of art before you've even made it, it's not a great place to be for the artist. So I
Wow.
would rather do something with zero money and have no expectations out of anybody and then just present it than have over 100 people that are expecting something great because they paid for it up front, and then have just this enormous pressure on your shoulders to make something really fabulous. And that's a lot. That's a lot to bear.
Because you have enough pressure as it is,
Right.
crafting the story, filming it, the production, everything. Yeah, I could see that. I
Yeah.
could definitely see that. And as far as the promotion side, obviously film festivals play a pivotal role in showcasing these films, and you worked them before. I mean, your experience with film festivals, is it positive and negative, a little of both? Is it something you look forward to, or it's part of the business?
I would never be a film festival director again, especially not one that's attached to a major convention. Um, uh, I think film festivals are great. I submitted to Sundance this year, and we did not get selected. So it's a disappointing, hard thing to go through as a filmmaker, but I think it's necessary. Um, I think for all disciplines of art, you need to have a level of rejection therapy that you have to go through. I think film festivals are a really good place for that.
So you wouldn't go so far as to say a necessary evil, but necessary.
Yeah. I don't think you have to play a film festival circuit to get your film seen or bought, but I think it's one of the many tools for independent artists to get their stuff out there.
Now, okay, so if you could reinterpret a traditional holiday or festival through a horror lens, uh, which one do you think you would?
4th of
Which
July.
particular? What really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. You didn't even hesitate. You were like 4th of July.
Yeah.
What kind of element do you see? What kind of horror lens do you see
I
for that one?
am really into American history, and I think it would be fun to do a conspiratorial horror movie that is somehow related to 4th of July. Just immediately, if I'm thinking holidays, I think that would be a cool vehicle to tell a conspiracy theory horror movie.
Dating back to the founding of the country.
Perhaps.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I could see that. I like that.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side of that, say a classic children's fairy tale into a horror film. Now, which would you choose, and would you try to transform the narrative to terrify modern audiences? How would you go about it?
I have a mermaid horror movie script that I've written, so maybe Mermaid, The Little Mermaid. I think mermaids are just really ethereally creepy. I've always found them very eerie and strange creatures. The Baba Yaga lore is interesting to me as
The
well.
Russian,
Hmm.
the Russian witch
Yeah,
who steals children.
yeah. I think she's pretty cool. Man, I mean, I've read so many very interesting urban legends and stories through Something Scary. I mean, every week I'm just like, how did I not know about this one? There's just so many cool ones out there, and I'm constantly learning about new stuff. So taking elements from a few and making something of my own, I think is probably where I'd end up and land. But like I said, I like stuff with witches.
Okay, so witches and mermaids.
Yeah. Maybe a
Yeah.
witch mermaid.
Oh, that would be different. And you did mention earlier about you do like stories concerning fairies or the fae, which
Mm-hmm.
I have on the outlier. I do have like kind of an interest in that whole the fairy folklore or the fae, the little folk, and what have you, because there's so many cultures, especially overseas,
Mm-hmm.
surrounding it. And I've always wondered, it's like, you know, for the sake of conversation, how many creatures that we know of folklore could have actually been the Fae? I
Right.
mean, I mentioned earlier La Llorona. You just mentioned Baba Yaga. I mean, they're two different cultures, very similar stories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
Well, I mean, I think it's similar to the ancient alien theory conversation or dragons. I mean, there's so many cultures around the world in different points of history that have similar legends and stories that mirror each other. And it's like, how did 5,000 years ago these people on this side of the world and these people on this side of the world have the same experience? Because there's no way to communicate any of that. Um, yeah, that stuff's really cool. Ancient history is really fun to learn about and play with.
so the chances are good that all of these monsters we hear about, the aliens, the Bigfoots, maybe they're all fairies.
Maybe.
I think that would be an interesting angle to take for a film.
Yeah.
Everything you ever heard of, they're fairies.
They're all fairies. I'm a fairy.
I don't know if you're a Supernatural fan, but fight the fairies. That's a whole TV show thing.
Hmm.
Okay. Oh, I did. I'm sorry. I was going to ask this earlier. You did have a paranormal encounter, I believe, in Athens, Georgia, one
Yeah.
time. If you could share that.
I don't know if it was
Uh,
paranormal or just experiencing an energy that was left over from a very horrific event, but the the short version is I got told about this location. It was a house in Athens. I went to go film it. It was abandoned. And I walked up to the back door, and when I touched the handle, this jolt of electricity energy shot up through my body, and I pulled my hand back. And where I was standing, it was looking directly into the living room of this house. And there was just one couch and a rolled up um, rug sitting there. And I later found out when I researched the property that that exact location is where the bodies of the homeowners were found, a husband and wife who had been murdered by a young man. He was 15 years old, I believe, who had been camping out in their basement for a few days and then ultimately stabbed them to death with a spear that was on display in their house and then rolled them up in their own carpet. And where I was standing was exactly where they were found. So I don't know what that was, but it was shocking enough for me to leave immediately.
wow. So was that like the first and only time you've had an encounter like that when you're filming, or
It's the only time I've ever felt something physically in my body that made me want to leave a location. I've thought I've seen things in places, but when you're in the dark, for hours on end, hopped up on energy drinks, Lord knows
yeah?
what you're actually seeing. Um, and I have a lot of theories on what I think ghosts are and what paranormal is, but I'm open to the exploration of it. And I think, like a lot of people, I am curious what happens after we die. So I think it's maybe fun's not the right word, but an interesting concept to explore.
Absolutely. I would love to see you explore that down the road with films. So, looking ahead, and we can wrap up. Thank you so much for joining me here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, looking ahead, what are your aspirations for the future of horror cinema, and how do you envision contributing to its evolution?
I am interested in mixing mediums and figuring out new ways to push the idea of film forward, whatever that means. I just want to do things that are interesting and unique, something that's going to push the boundary of all of that stuff. I think that with AI, we have very unique opportunities to do some really interesting stuff. I know it's scary to a lot of people, but I see it as something like, when we switched over, almost everybody switched over from film to digital. I think it's just another tool that's available to us. Um, but yeah, I mean, I just want to tell cool stories, and ultimately, like I said at the beginning, I use scary stories as a way to connect to other people, because I think everyone relates to fear to some degree, and I think it's the great connector of all people on Earth. So
So it's what binds us all,
I think
that
so.
primal
Yeah.
fear. Well, Blair, this has been a blast. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. What do you have coming up? Anything you can share with the audience, and I can provide links to in the description below?
Well, we just started doing video versions of the podcast for Something Scary. So now we have full uh, 30-minute pieces to go along with the podcast on Spotify and YouTube. And I think they look pretty good, if I do say so myself. And so doing that, I also have a very big thing that I hopefully can announce soon, where I'll be going overseas and working with a very prestigious event, and doing something that's never been done before with them. And I've got a film that's going to be on the festival circuit this year, and Lord knows what else I get up to. But please follow me and join the journey.
Absolutely. And for those of you listening and watching, if you're watching this on YouTube, I will provide links to all of Blair's social media, her website, in the comments in the video description below, so you can follow her and keep track of this amazing career. Blair, once again, thank you for joining us. It's been a blast. You're an absolutely lovely person.
Thank you so much.
And this has been, I just forgot the name of my own podcast. I'm losing it today.
All good.
You're like, this guy is an amateur. Oh my God.
No, you're fantastic, man. You're fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. You're awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us. This has been Beyond the Compass, where travelers and the paranormal meet at the crossroads. Thank you. Have an awesome day. I think that went well.
Yeah, I think you did great.
For my clumsiness at the end.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
no.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.